As you can see, I have a nice mess of corn silks here. I'm going to spread them out and dehydrate them so they're preserved to make corn silk tea. Now sometimes on corn, especially sweet corn, you'll get a little bit of a dark edge of the top. It looks like this. This came off our really sweet corn, and this brown edge was a beautiful shade of purple until after it was picked, and it rapidly started to dry and darken. There actually is nothing wrong with that. You would not have to throw it away if you didn't want to. Some folks believe it keeps it a little bit damp and can create moisture that you do not want when you're preserving. I've never known to deter the taste, but we've picked over 60 dozen ears of corn in the last several days, so I have ample corn silk, so I don't have to worry about not having enough. So I'm going to go ahead and peel it off just in case. And as you can see, I have a mesh liner in my dehydrator. It's just a Nesco middle market dehydrator. One of these days I'm going to get Excalibur, but the two Nesco ones I've had are lower end one before this one, which was maybe $125. Got on sale for $70. Has worked great. As far as durability, we've used it heavily. I don't really notice any difference in drying times between this and a lower end Excalibur, one of your typical residential models. That may speed up a little bit more. Maybe it dries more thoroughly. Everybody who has one loves them. I don't know how much of a difference there would be, but I like the size difference in them, and that the trays are square. It seems to fit a lot more stuff in the space that you need. We're dealing with something a little thicker or heavier than something that's more pliable like this. Our older Nesco dried well. Dried almost as quickly, but it was really noisy. And the more I used it, the longer it took to dry. It didn't hold up like this one. This one is almost silent. So you want to spread out your corn silks on your dehydrator tray. Now they're silks. It's going to be almost impossible to keep them from touching a little bit. Anytime you're dehydrating, you don't want anything to touch any more than just a tip or any more than possible, because you can get a damp spot. Things that dry evenly and takes longer. You have to pull out some of what you're working with and dry some of the rest of it that didn't dry completely. Then you're doing guesswork. And if you're trying to save them to get enough in a jar to preserve, especially if you're doing a meal in a jar, dry ingredients type of a deal, recipe, you don't want to be spending an extra half a day on having all this mess out on your counter, waiting for just the last little bit to get dry that you need before you can seal a jar or have your recipe complete. So I'm filling out my dehydrator tray. You could use the liners that you would use for like fruit leather that don't have the little mesh air holes in them. I think that does expand drying time a little bit, and this will be enough to keep all but super tiny pieces flowing through. I tried once to see if there was a difference on waste or anything falling through, putting 2 mesh liners in to see if that helped catch some of the little tinky tiny tidbits that might have torn off or gotten extra dry. I noticed a little bit of a difference, but no extended drying time and not a much savor of mess or lost a little tinky tiny bit of corn silk to mess with it again. But I've got my tray almost full. I'm guessing the number of silks on this tray are probably maybe from 5 or 6 ears of corn. So what you do is once you get that tray on, you can go ahead. I usually go 4 or 5 trays. I found with my machines at least, you go about 4 or 5 depending on how thick of an item you're dehydrating. It just increases the drying time so much that adding an extra little bit on there to get more done at once really isn't working because it's taking you longer to do it. Now I have more corn silks I'm going to put on this tray, but I also want to show you, you can go ahead and dehydrate the shucks on here if you're not going to air dry, hang dry, or oven dry them. If you're doing small bits at once, because you want to try to dehydrate your corn silk for medicinal purposes as quickly as you would as you're preserving the corn in the first 4 to 6 hours. You can go ahead and spread out your husks on here. It doesn't matter if you're doing the husk and the silk at the same time. There's no problem. You could even do some on the same tray if you wanted to. And they are a lot thicker, of course, than the silks, so I'm leaving ample space between them. These are ones that I had started to hang dry in our shelter house, but now we're getting storms. And even though they are protected from the rain, it's not blowing really hard enough to get them inside the shelter house, so I assume there is some residual water, but I didn't really notice any water on them. It's so damp outside that It's just going to take so long to dry them. I won't have them when I need them for a birthday project for my mother and mother-in-law. And also when they keep getting moist during the day and have to re-dry, it's much worse of a chance to get mildew growing in them, or bugs eating off of them, or a goat climbing up on a table trying to reach them and nibble on them, which I had happen even though I already gave them a whole bunch of shucks and husks to eat. So I'm filling out that tray. I wouldn't have needed to waste a liner in here. These are big enough that if they fall through, it would be unusual, and if they did, it'd be easy to go ahead and pick up. It's not like I'm dealing with tomatoes or something where you're real going to lose your ingredients. You would just scoop the husk or even the silks off your bottom pan here. If you've not dehydrated before, there's always a catch pan. I dehydrated some sassafras leaves the other day, so I still have some residue in there that I really do need to clean out, but it's not going to have any scent that's going to infiltrate. Like if I had onion residue in there, I'm doing tomatoes or something, those types of things will tend to misflavor what you're dehydrating. So you can get your silks or some of your husks laid out, and then you put your lid back on your machine, or depending on your machine, if it's next caliber type one, you just close your drawer. Now my machine starts as soon as I plug it in, so I'm holding off here just a minute because of the noise, but I do want you to hear how fairly silent this model is. Oops, I have a little bit of a corn husk sticking out. Let me fix that. But I'm going to set it, some people recommend 120, 125. I've always had the best luck going to 135, which is the fruit and vegetable setting, 57 degrees Celsius. If you're watching this and don't live in America, use Celsius. 125 to 135 would be all higher that I would go, where you could risk burning it, getting it too hot, and losing the nutrients in the corn silks for medicinal tea. And go ahead and plug it in. And the weird noise you may have heard when I plug it in wasn't a machine issue, it was my dog stretching. But you can hear the air blowing out. It does make some noise, but it's definitely a lot quieter than our cheaper Nesco model that I really started putting out in the garage because it was driving me nuts during the evening. Now you're gonna need to let these dry maybe up to 10 hours. With the shucks, it just depends on how thick they are, how many you've used. Anywhere from 3 to 8, 10 max hours, depending on how many husks you put on there too. If you're just doing silks, I'd say more like the 3 to 6 range. It all depends on how many you put in, how many trays you use in your own dehydrator machine. I can't see it taking any longer than 10 hours if I fill this with 4 to 5 trays, alternating the silks and the husks.